Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Arseholics. Got a nice change of host again today. It's me, Aaron, and it's Sunday, the 21st of May, and we are speaking after another defeat, 1-0 defeat away to Nottingham Forest, and a defeat that sadly means the dream is over. Man City are Premier League champions again for the 5th time in 6 years, which is crazy. And joining me to discuss this and everything else that it means is Raj. Raj, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm trying to put lots of mental pressure on you here, right? Because you have hosted before, obviously, but you've not hosted, I think, when I've been on as well. It's
Yeah, I
been when
know.
I've not been it. So I'm here just
Just to
putting
make
all
my
this
life completely
subliminal
awkward.
pressure on you.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. I mean, it could be. I mean, it's not like anything monumental or significant in terms of the season that's happened, right? Like, it's just the
Yeah.
fact that the dream we've been chasing for 9 months is finally over, and it ended in a bit of an anticlimax. I mean, it was a 1-0 defeat away to Nottingham Forest, a 19-minute goal, a very interesting team selection, a very dull and drab performance. So I guess the context here as to why I'm hosting is I, unfortunately, due to various family circumstances, didn't watch the game properly. I saw bits of it. I've seen highlights, but Raj, you watched the game. You sat through the 90 minutes of end-to-end exciting action. What's your key takeaway? Like, what is your one headline from the game?
One headline's a good question. I'd probably say we're on the beach. I think.
Yeah,
I think.
and yeah, go on.
Yeah,
And
no,
you think
go for the end. Yeah.
okay? And I think the theme of this pod, right, is going to be: is it okay to be annoyed? Right.
That's a really good theme. Actually,
And
that's cool. Yeah.
I think everything we do is going to be like, oh, this is really rubbish, but hang on a second, we're still second, and we're going to have
Yeah.
to. We
So we
maybe
need to.
we maybe have to park that sometimes, right?
I
Because
agree. I totally agree. Should we just get that caveat out of the way now? So
yeah,
should we do like 1 minute of just caveating, right?
yeah,
And how wonderful it's been. Yeah.
yeah, it has been wonderful, right? I think you and I have both said this, right? This has been like one of the best seasons of going to games, the best atmosphere, some of the best home games I've seen, like amazing away performances, away at Chelsea, away at Spurs, away at Villa. How we started at Anfield. We will finish on some of the highest points total we've finished in a long, long time, and far more than we've anticipated. But we've lost to Nottingham Forest away from home, and we've lost to Brighton at home, and that's 2 games in a row we've gone without scoring. Um, let's kind of get right down to it, Raj. Is it good enough?
Yeah. You know what? It's over the course of the season, like absolutely right. It is good enough because it's really hard. It's football works in a really weird way, right? It's not like you it's not like a loss at the beginning of the season is worth any more or less than a loss later on in the season. How you accumulate your points is almost irrelevant. You get what you get in the end. And so I think a lot of focus has been made recently on the fact that people are saying, well, second's great and everything, but to capitulate like we did over the last number of games is totally unacceptable. And I kind of understand that to a certain extent, but you seasons don't work like that. You almost accumulate points at certain periods, because there's going to be periods where you might not be very good, and so where it happens is it can be sporadic. It can happen for lots of reasons. So look, overall, I think it is acceptable, but I think it's just really hard to take. And when you look at some of it, and I reckon in the summer it'll be easier to be philosophical about it, where I think we just have to accept that probably isn't any of the players' fault, really. It's probably not even Arteta's fault overall. Probably just that it was a little bit too early for us. And, with a little bit more squad building, we would have been closer.
So then, can you really analyze this game in the context of 90 minutes? Like, how much do you think the performance on the pitch from minute 0 to minute 90 is actually that important in analysing the result? Or do you think this was a result that came through as a consequence of the last 36 games and where we were in the season, the result against Brighton, the 6 or 7 games that came before that? And do you think this was a team that looked down and out? Because I think for me, the minute we went down, 2-0 down to Brighton or whatever it was, that for me was like, this team were done. Like, I saw the team give up mentally, give up physically. The attacking just didn't work. The defense looked as vulnerable as it has done in the last kind of 6 or 7 games. And this to me just seemed a continuation of that, right? And the bits I saw of the game and the highlights, it looked like we could have played that game for another 3 days and not scored.
Yeah. As I think you've got to look at the Brighton game and this game very differently, I think, because Brighton still very much everything was on the line. So the reasons for that defeat, you could probably analyze in a different way. Actually, some of the reasons for this defeat, it kind of links, I think, to the comment that Charles has made here, which I put on the screen, which is he's saying, help Gooners make it sense. Why is Arteta experimenting with lineup and positions in 37th game of the season? Why still no ESR? So I think my answer to your original question around how much you analyze this game, it lies a little bit in some of the stuff that Charles is saying. I don't really think you can analyze this game that much, because I do think, as much as Arteta said mathematically it wasn't over, in his mind, I think he knew it was over. And you're very rarely, very, very rarely going to be able to get a situation where you can use Premier League competitive matches to experiment in any way. I think he knows that. And I think, pre-season is one thing, but he has a couple of games, if you include Forest, so Forest and the Wolves game, to try a couple of things that maybe he wasn't, he didn't have the bandwidth to try earlier on in the season because of what was riding on it. And so we saw, for example, against Forest, Partey at right back and playing in an inverted right back role. So we haven't done that this season. Ben White, although he's been he comes in a little bit, he's not playing the inverted fullback role like Zinchenko had been. And this game, we did it. We basically just did the inverted fullback role from the right-hand side with Thomas Partey. And we had, Kiwior playing at left back. And we wouldn't have done that, I don't think, in another situation. I don't think we would have done that if there was that much going on, or if there was that much on the line. So in that regard, I think that it's hard to really analyze too much, because maybe Arteta was being smart. I know as fans, we might get upset and think that, it's still a Premier League game. You shouldn't be experimenting in that way. But I don't know. Maybe we will look back on this. Just to finish up, maybe we'll look back on this, and if we do the same thing again next season and win, maybe we'll look back on it and say, well, it's good that we worked out those kinks against the Forest game last season.
So you genuinely think this was a team selection, especially with that back four, and to a certain extent, again, playing Jorginho in on the base of the midfield, was a kind of on the beach selection? I don't know. The way I looked into that, I think it was a selection out of frustration as to what happened up with Brighton. The fact that Tierney played against Brighton and he struggled. And I think he then said, well, I can't play Zinchenko because Zinchenko's injured. I don't trust Tierney. So the only person I can then play is Kiwior at left back. And then he just shuffles everyone across and then goes to the emergency right back, which is Thomas Partey. And I don't know if that's something that he wanted to see. I mean, obviously he wanted to see it because he played it, but I don't think that was this game doesn't matter. I think this is my last roll of the dice. Okay. I don't trust anyone else, and he's kind of learning who he likes and who he's given up on. I think to me it's very clear that Tierney is done, which is a shame because I think he's a wonderful player. But for Arteta, Tierney is done. I think to some extent Vieira is another player that seems to have disappeared after he came back in the squad. I know he came off the bench, but he seems like he might be on his way out. Again, like players like Eddie Nketiah, there's no reason why, with Jesus struggling the way he has done, he couldn't have got minutes. But I don't think Arteta trusts him. And then, we've spoken about him so many times on this podcast, but Emil Smith-Rowe, another player that Arteta really doesn't seem to want to play. So yeah, I don't think this is I don't think he saw this as a free hit, because you look at his post-match press conference, he sounded really annoyed.
Yeah, but let me rephrase what was. So when I don't think it was an on the beach selection, although I think he used the opportunity to try something that he's wanted to try. I think it was an on the beach performance. So I think the players that he put out ultimately, still that lineup still should have been good enough to beat Nottingham Forest, particularly because offensively it's everything that, it's the best possible team that we could have played. So I think it was that I think that was a bit on the beach. But your points that you made afterwards, I really, it's hard to disagree with any of them really. The Tierney thing, I think I've sort of come to accept before this game, and maybe even before Brighton. I think in my mind, I thought I couldn't see him selling Tierney, because Tierney is still a very good, like, pound for pound fullback, like traditional fullback. He's still quite good like that. And there are times where the situation might necessitate that. But I think I've come, and you said this a while ago, where you said, I think you said, I don't think Arteta knows what to do with a traditional fullback. I kind of get your point in that maybe I'd spin it as that I don't think Arteta wants his plan B to be a traditional fullback. I think he just wants it to be an alternative of his plan A, as in a better version of his plan A. Or if his plan A isn't working with the inverted fullback, you bring in someone else who can do the inverted fullback, but it's not. Yeah.
Is that even a plan B? Is that
exactly?
This is my frustration with Arteta, right? For all his, again, we caveat this, is that, look, we know he's had a wonderful season, right? He's up there with manager of the season for me in terms of how he's taken us from 5th to 2nd place in the space of a season. But should he, when you've got a player like Kieran Tierney on the bench, right, a player who we know, again, last season was literally one of our most valuable players, a player that he, as Arteta, depended on in terms of our defensive structure, the way we play, to completely abandon that and say, actually, I'm only going to make Tierney do this kind of Zinchenko type left back role. And yes, I can get Kieran Tierney to overlap, and I can build a team around Kieran Tierney, but I'm effectively refusing to do that, because that's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
Is that when your plan A isn't working? We all see in the plan A, when the plan A works, it works brilliantly, right? But there are going to be situations in next season where, for whatever reason, the plan A isn't working because the players on the pitch, either physically or tactically, aren't able to do it, or, as we've seen this season, due to injuries, we just don't have the personnel to make that system work, right? And is it on the manager to say, actually, look, I can't do what I want to do with this team now. What I'm going to do is actually set the team up that will give us the best chance of winning this game, and that is to get the best out of players like Kieran Tierney.
Yes.
Instead, and is Arteta saying, look, he can't play a system, so we're just going to play crap? Like, is that good enough?
I don't know if it's good enough, but I think that Arteta still would have had a longer term view on this. I don't think that he would have lost sight of the fact that he is trying to take this team somewhere technically. And as much as he has to make short-term concessions every now and again, I think that he still would have had concerns that, I think, trying to go, well, fine, I don't have Zinchenko, so I have Tierney, and therefore I need to play the system better, which I suppose gets more out of Tierney. I don't think he would have wanted to do that, because I think he would have just thought that it was taking too much away from the journey he was trying to go on. I suppose if you look at Pep Guardiola and look at City, and he's obviously had every asset at his disposal, and he spent so much money on fullbacks, I don't even think his plan D or E has traditional fullbacks. Like, there is no, I've not seen him once this season play with traditional fullbacks. Even when he plays people like Kyle Walker, and he's played him in a back three, he's not played him, I don't recall, in a back four where he's played him as a traditional fullback. He's just almost got annoyed and said that, he can't play the inverted role, and struggles with him a bit. So anyway, I guess my point is, I can see Arteta going a similar direction with saying, I think he's probably going to try and think about different models, and he's probably tried them a couple of times this season in maybe ways in which we've not necessarily been able to pick up on. But I don't think that the traditional fullback way is a route that he wants to go down. Maybe he sees it just impacting too much of everyone else on the team. So you call it stubbornness. You could talk. You could say maybe should he have done more to figure out alternative plans with some of the players that he had. But you know what, mate? Like I sort of thought about it today, and I say, let me ask you the question, yeah? Do you think, and this is going to sound like a segue, but there's a reason to this. Do you think that Erling Haaland made a material difference to Man City this season?
Yeah, absolutely. What? Yeah.
Yeah,
of course.
yeah,
Yeah,
right?
he scored almost 40 goals this season. Yeah. So yeah.
Sure. So then, would you say that the reason that Man City beat Arsenal to the title was Erling Haaland?
Yeah. I mean, the question is, would they have done it without him? I have no idea. Probably, because they're Man City, right?
It's hard, but then you'd say he didn't make a material difference.
Yeah, I see your point, right? In that, yeah. Look, I think what Pep has done, right? It's really hard though to like analyze Man City like this because the problem is, right? Like you put Erling Haaland in any other team, you can be like, yeah, like he's clearly made the difference. The problem is with Man City, if they don't have Erling Haaland, they've got bloody Julian Alvarez who could probably score 25 to 30 goals a season in this Man City team because he's got players like Bernardo Silva, Mahrez, Jack Grealish, and De Bruyne around him, and Phil Foden and everyone else as well. And
I agree. I get where I'm going with it was just about, are we analyzing margins here that are a bit, yeah, we can analyze them to death, and we can say, should he have done this differently, that, this, that, and the other. But ultimately, we're only analyzing it really, right? Because ultimately we became unstuck and we didn't win the league. But you almost have to just say, okay, what is it that the other team who beat us did better? And I'm not trying to make excuses here, but I think it is fair to say that regardless, I think you're totally right in that you cannot, it's not that easy to just simplify it to that degree. But, big but, right? Erling Haaland has basically established himself as the best striker that the Premier League has seen in a given season, right? In terms of his numbers, it's totally incredible. And he shattered records in how he's done it. So, he'll win Player of the Year and all the rest of it. He'll win Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year. Who knows? He might win the Ballon d'Or. I don't know, right? But you think that if you have that level of player and I'm going to say just lost, there's an argument to say if we just lost the title or not. But then is it the case, Aaron, where should we really be kind of forensically analyzing some of our sort of tactical decisions? Because does it not seem a little bit unfair?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said earlier, right? Which is I think it's impossible to analyze this game in the context of the team selection in 90 minutes. I think this game is the outcome of the 36 that came before it in the league, which is this to me looked like a team that was like done in terms of kind of like how, look, when we've seen it before, right? When the defense isn't doing what we were doing in the first half of the season, the attack had so much in it, so much fight, so much perseverance to turn it around and say, okay, if we concede one, we're going to go and score two. And we have the ability to create chances consistently, create danger in the box, create pressure. And we know that will lead to shots and ultimately to a goal. But I just think after that Brighton game, especially after that second goal went in, this team were done. I think the fan base was done, to be honest. I think we were like, okay, we're down and out. And that's, again, you can't ignore the context of Man City in the background. If this was a normal opponent, you'd be like, actually, there's 3 games left. Like, it's not over. But this was after City had won, was it 10 league games in a row? It's just, that's what City do to you, is that when they put you under so much pressure because you know that they're going to be perfect, you know you have to be perfect. And we certainly haven't been perfect. And there was only so much, slack left in this team that we could squeeze out and that we could keep pulling on, and we just ran out. And I think that was very, very evident. And we've talked about the defense, Raj, but what about the attack, right? Because reading around the game, reading some of the match reports, it looked like our attack was very, very flat. Why do you think that is? Is it like, well, look, we had Martinelli was out, but we had Trossard come in, right? Trossard, who is a relatively big money signing. We have Gabriel Jesus, our one of our biggest signings of all time, really, in the context of the last 10 years, and Saka, one of the best players in the league, right? So why isn't that working?
So one easy way of looking at the very easy response is actually that until they scored their goal, we actually looked pretty good. So in terms of all of our build-up play, I think either we had figured out what Nottingham Forest were going to do structurally and did very well, and had a good plan against that, or it was just that Nottingham Forest didn't actually figure out how to stop us well enough, in the sense that we were playing passing patterns in there around them. We were knocking it past them. We were giving and going. It was very easy to get into dangerous parts of the final third, and it was the final ball that was lacking, really. And then they scored completely against the run of play. Odegaard, misplaces a pass horrifically, but it's Odegaard, so we'll let him off because he's been magnificent. And it's that leads to a goal. And then after that, Nottingham Forest have gone, look, if we win, we're safe, right? So let's just do everything we can to just protect this lead. And then you just defend for your lives. You just get everyone behind the ball and you defend for your lives. And then it was harder, even though with the best one in the world, it was just harder to create chances. Now we still should do better, but in basic terms, that's kind of how I saw it. Now, you talk about personnel. It's really important, I think, that we look at this, because we did. You're right. You just said a bunch of names there. And all those names, to me, even though Martinelli was out, still for me mean that if you're playing against a team who is just deep blocking, completely deep block, you still should have enough talent there to do something. So then I think we come to bigger questions, mate, like where the underlying numbers are relatively concerning on a couple of our players. And it's mainly Saka, to be honest. And bear with me, because I don't necessarily think it's going to sound like I'm massively criticizing him, but I think there's something bigger to look at here, which is just around squad depth. But I sort of looked at it from the 1st of April till now. There's been 9 games, and there's only been 1 game where he's got a goal or assist in that 9-game period. That's a long time, and that game that he got a goal and assist was against Southampton at home. So against the worst team in the league, he scored a goal and got an assist. And in no other game in that 9-game period, so since the 1st of April, he has not had a goal or assist. That cannot happen at this stage of the season for one of your best players, if not like the guy that you arguably rely on the most for goal output. I don't know, you argue that, to do that. So on one way, you can just point to it and you go, that's him. Because actually, I know that, we've sort of criticized people like Gabriel Jesus. Gabriel Jesus in that same period has 5 goals stroke assists. He's had 5 goal contributions in 9 games and has played far fewer minutes. So, maybe he's had games where he's not been the greatest, but still. So I think, mate, when it comes to that, part of the issue is Saka has evidently, look at him, he's just been knackered. Because until that 9-game period, the longest he went, there was basically a 20-game period where the longest in that 20-game period he went without a goal or assist was 1 game. So there's only ever 1 game. That happened a couple of times, but he never went more than 1 game without a goal or assist, which is what you need at this level, right? If you're going to win a title, basically, if you want to be like a match winner, and if you want to be like a top player, top forward, that's what you need. And unfortunately, when he wasn't doing that, we came unstuck because there was no one else that could come in and do that on that side. So in simple terms, maybe if our wide players were sharper, like Trossard, he should have done better. He had a poor game against Brighton as well, but overall, actually, he's had a better spell of contribution over sort of the last couple of months. So yeah, mate, I think that part of it was just maybe a bunch of players who had just run out of ideas, who were a bit tired, a bit on the beach. Maybe if they had, maybe if they had something that they genuinely believe, if they genuinely thought if we won today, we're going to win the league, maybe that would have pushed them. But I just don't think it was enough, mate.
Yeah, I think that your point on Saka is bang on, right? That we've had no real backup right-sided player.
So I can't hear you again, but that is probably my my thing. So I'm going to just take it out. So carry on, go for it.
Okay, well, I was going to say, I think your point on Saka is spot on. That you look at Saka, he's played pretty much every single minute of the league season, the Premier League for us, and he's played England internationals, and he's had a World Cup to play. And I remember there was that international break during March where I think Southgate played him like pretty much 90 minutes in both of those games, or at least the majority of both of those games. And you compare that to our opponents, and you look at Haaland. Haaland didn't even go to the World Cup. Haaland, the international break where Norway had some quite crucial games in March, Haaland didn't turn up because he was injured, right? I'm not doubting his injury, but Saka was playing both those games, and we already have a disadvantage when it looks at the squad, right? When it comes to our squad versus Man City, right? Charles, points out that like 3,000 minutes for Saka versus lower numbers for Foden, Mahrez, and Grealish, and that we need a backup wing, and he's right, because
totally right.
Not only can City rotate, right? City can rotate their best players to give them less minutes, but then actually their best players aren't playing a World Cup to the latter stages, and they're not going away and being run to the ground by an idiot of an England manager who doesn't know how to rotate his players. So that is super, super frustrating. So let's say, Roger, we get another right winger in. Or let's take a step back, right? So you clearly point out, right? So we've got now like Trossard, Martinelli, Saka, Jesus. And let's say those four, we're pretty sure, but all four of them will be here next season. What do we need to add to that to be competitive? Because keep in mind, yes, Saka was playing every minute of the Premier League, but he wasn't playing in Europe, right? None of these guys were really playing in Europe because we rotated quite heavily in the Europa League. But these guys are going to have to play Champions League as well next season. What do we need from our attacking unit? Like what positional types, what attacking types do we need to really have a go at both these competitions next year?
So my answer is sort of connected to what Russ is saying here as well. Russ is saying here, Jesus isn't a number 9. He's constantly dropping into wide positions or midfield. He seems to be allergic to the 6-yard box. There's some truth in that. The thing is, now I feel like you can't have it both ways. We have a system which quite clearly Arteta wants to generate output from his wide players, but also his number 10. And also, I think if we get a better number 8, someone like, playing the Xhaka role could even get more goals and assists to it. That only works if you've got a number 9 who is going to drop deep and do those things that the chaos or whatever, Arteta's described it as chaos. You do need that. So I don't necessarily think, so I think it's fine. I think us going into next season with Jesus as our number 9 is totally fine. But I think we need an alternative for when it's not working well, right? And Eddie is not that alternative because he's very similar. It's just, he's similar. He does a lot of things that Jesus does, but not quite as well. You could say that he's more of a box player in terms of he naturally maybe wants to get in the box more, but he is a pressing forward. He's not a big physical presence. So I think we need a bigger unit, a more sort of powerful centre forward. Now, the thing is, you'd much rather be in this position where you're looking for a player like that as your plan B than you're looking for a player like that as your plan A, which is what Chelsea, United, Bayern Munich, everyone is looking for a proper number 9 centre forward, and the market is awful, right now. It's awful. Like they talk about Chelsea buying Vlahovic for 80 million euros, allegedly, right? It's an awful market to go look for that type of profile. So in a way, we're a bit lucky because we basically don't need a world-class player in that mold. We need someone who's going to be the alternative and someone who, it's just when it's not working properly that can kind of give us that added dimension. But I think then, so I think it's important. I'd love us to get someone like that. I don't know if they think that Balogun can do it. From what I've seen about Balogun, I've seen, very little. I haven't watched France that well, and I don't really think that you can judge too much about the French league, to be honest. But I think that, if they think that he can do it, okay, cool, fine, give it a shot. I don't know. But we definitely need someone who can play on that right-hand side and not drop off and not give a material drop off versus Saka. Yeah. I'm not saying we're going to get a Saka equivalent because Saka's arguably one of the best right wingers in the world right now. So what are we going to sign a £1 million player to rotate with him? That's not going to happen. But I think we need someone who can play there and not give us that material drop off. And I think there's quite a few players, it seems like, in Europe who are of that. It's a much better place to go find a player than it is that number 9 profile that we talked about. And Moussa Diaby, for example, is someone who they talk about at Leverkusen as being in many ways perfect to that kind of profile. So I think we need those things, mate, to be honest. And the other thing which I've been banging on about is I really think this team would bang with a proper number 8. There's lots of rumors that that part of the reason why the Declan Rice talk is so progressed and why we might have a shout versus some of the other clubs is actually that Declan Rice doesn't want to be a DM for the rest of his career. He doesn't just want to be this kind of being shielding the back four and doing this role that he plays for West Ham, when in reality, he's a lot more complete and he can play in a more progressed position. So there's one of the theories is that why? Is it because Arteta is basically saying, I'll make you my number 8. You can be my number 8. I don't know. Maybe that's just a theory. But if it is Declan Rice or if it is whoever else it is, if it's Declan Rice, hopefully, and someone else, and they do this kind of, I don't know, they manage that in however way they can. I don't know. But I think we need a number 8 as well. So I think I hope that's answered your question. I think what we need is a number 8, a right-sided forward. And I'm hoping that right-sided forward can probably play centrally as well. But we do need a different centre forward profile. But if that is, I know it sounds really bad. I'm not saying we should sign Weghorst. But someone like an Origi, that mold where, it's just going to give you something different in those situations.
Yeah, I think I'd agree, right?
What do you think?
Yeah. Wait, firstly, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. Look, I think we definitely need more, right? So the right-sided player is a no-brainer for me, right? You can't rely on Saka to play every minute of every game because he can't do it. He just it's physically impossible. No player can maintain the level that Saka has maintained for 38 league games plus potentially 10, 11 European games next season. Plus all the England games, right? He's probably going to be rocking up playing 60, 70 games a season, which is insane. And we really need to protect him because he's getting kicked left, right, and center in all of these games as well. So, look, the right-sided player is a no-brainer. I do think we need another type. I think we just need another quality forward. I don't think necessarily that we need a different type of forward to Gabriel Jesus. I think a player of like Gabriel Jesus who is in the box, who can get in there. And Gabriel Jesus isn't a bad player in the box. He can dribble, he can get a shot away. It's just his finishing is sometimes a bit questionable, but he's still a very good in the box player. So what we need is just another one, right? The problem is we bring on Nketiah and I just don't think he's that good. I know you think he's a worse Gabriel Jesus. I think he's just a not as good footballer all round for this level. So
a bit harsh. At this level, fair. When you say at this level, what do you mean?
The level that we need, right? When we're pushing Europa League, when we're pushing top 4, bringing on Eddie off the bench is probably okay because he doesn't need to score the winner every time we come on. Every time he comes on, it's okay if he misses a few chances, and we have the time for him to grow, and he might grow into a really good player. Right, I'm not saying he's destined to play non-league football for the rest of his career, but the level in this team has gone up, and I don't think he's at that level. Right, and I hope he does well. I hope he goes somewhere, and I hope he bangs in plenty of goals, and hopefully against Man City when we're challenging them.
And hopefully on the way to doing that, we get a nice transfer fee, right?
Exactly, right? Like, just because Eddie doesn't make it Arsenal doesn't mean we've failed him, right? Like, as we've discussed before, like the level of this team has gone up. It means academy players are really going to struggle unless they are Saka levels of special. So what we need is to be able to move these players on. And you look at players like Iwobi, players like Willock. These are players who are doing well at top, well, Newcastle certainly, maybe not Everton, but top clubs in terms of the football pyramid, right? And that's okay. They can do that. So I think we just need a striker to come in to be like, the way Liverpool used Firmino in the last year or two to say, like, look, he's probably not going to start every game, but he's going to come on. He's going to do really well. We know we can rely on him. I think Arteta just needs a player he can trust. And then the other thing that I don't,
well, so
I've not really seen any.
What about this guy? I mean, Don, could this guy play up front for us? Don saying, where is Mize? I mean, is Mize someone who could play up front? Don also, I don't know if that's a comment. I don't know if that is that a complaint. Don, are we worse that Mize isn't here?
I think he's logged on. He's had enough already. He's like, sod this.
So is that Mize? Is it Mize? Is Mize actually Don?
Yeah,
Don,
I would have ruled it out.
If you're genuinely inquiring, Mize is unfortunately for family reasons couldn't make it today, but he's sends his apologies. Sorry, carry on,
Aaron. Clearly he has many fans. So yeah, the one thing I haven't seen people mention is Odegaard. I don't think we've got a backup to Odegaard. I don't think we've been really lucky this season because Odegaard has basically maintained top 2, top 3 Premier League players of the season level pretty much all season, right? And he's stayed
well,
fit.
And on that point, I was looking at that actually when I was looking at the stats for the other players. So Odegaard has never gone more than 3 games this season without a goal or an assist, and he's never had any period where he went more than 3 games.
And fair play to him. He's really, really upped his level this season, and hopefully he can sustain it. And hopefully this isn't an overperformance, but we do run the risk of saying like he might drop his level for 5 or 6 games next season, and then what do we do? We're going to bring on Vieira? Like that's not going to work. Or if he gets injured for 5 or 6 games, let's say he has a Saliba-like injury, which he just drops out of the team for 3 months in the end of the season, like we'd be screwed, completely screwed. And maybe that's another reason, like you said, adding a number 8 there and adding a number 8 with goals probably takes away some of that attacking dependency from Odegaard. But in terms of that creativity, there's literally no one in this squad that can do what he can do. Jorginho, probably can find a pass a bit like him, but isn't anywhere near consistent enough or strong enough to play a number 10 role. So yeah, like I do think we need to probably look at another creative player in there too, but I don't think that'll get done this summer.
I don't see it getting done, mate. I think we're just far more likely to try and say, Fabio Vieira, can you do that, and just give him more time. I just don't, like you say, I just don't see it happening with all the other priorities. I don't see it happening. And thinking about it, right? I suppose if you look at Man City, if Kevin De Bruyne isn't there, they don't necessarily do the same thing. It's not like they slot someone else in to do exactly that. They try and find a different solution. Do you think that's what we need to do? Just basically say if someone like Odegaard isn't playing, you don't just play the same system. You play a different system, but you get your players drilled enough and astute enough and understanding enough to be able to do that. Is that the answer?
Yeah, I think so. I think, look, the issue there is that we're going to probably lose Xhaka, it seems like, in that kind of attacking third of the pitch as well. And Xhaka has been responsible for a lot of good play on the other side to Odegaard, right? So you're taking out a lot of, let's say Odegaard gets injured and Xhaka's off, you're taking out a lot of creativity that we have to replace. And it does worry me because I haven't been convinced by Vieira. And hopefully, if we do get Declan Rice over the line, I know we're all talking like it's done, but my kind of pessimism when it comes to this club doing big deals and getting them over the line is that I don't buy it until it's absolutely done and dusted. I really do worry that I think there's a couple of areas where I think we're still very, very vulnerable to one injury and there being a complete huge drop off in what we can bring on. And I think that number 10 position is one of them. Cool. We've kind of sidetracked a bit, but we've talked about Jesus, we've talked about Saka. I think the other thing is probably that one thing that these last couple of games or this last game and a half has told me is that how important Martinelli is. Because Trossard can't do what Martinelli does, right? Like Trossard is a very good hold on to the ball, make intelligent runs, make intelligent off the ball, like find a pass and find a player in a good position, work hard type of player. But there are very few players in the Premier League that can do what Martinelli does, which is kind of beat their man, run at them, and just scare them and terrify them all game. And again, the bits I saw, again, it's very easy to say this when he's not there, right? But it really felt like we could have done with a Martinelli type runner on the pitch and not Trossard. So again, do you think that's something we need to add to the team as well? Or would you hope that this right wing replacement or backup for Saka can do that as well?
Yeah, probably, mate. Because if you think of it, we'd have to have quite a lot of luxury to think that. So on the left hand side currently, right, we've got Martinelli, we've got Trossard, and we've got Nelson as well, who plays on the left at the moment. Okay, Nelson, for whatever reason, wasn't fancied against Nottingham Forest. But let's say Nelson goes, because it sounds like he may go, he may not sign a new contract or whatever. I don't know, man. I feel like Trossard is a very good alternative to Martinelli because he is that little bit different. And I know what you're saying. I suppose your argument is, well, if Martinelli is injured and then you've only got Trossard there and he's your only option on the left, whatever. But it's quite a luxury, I think, to have a third left wing option who can, be your, I suppose, alternative to Martinelli in that respect. I'd argue, mate, that the way the Forest game was, Trossard would have been, in theory, more valuable because there was no space to run in behind, right? The way that Forest, it was a deep block, and what Trossard's really good. He's got great feet, so he's amazing in those tight spaces. So you would have assumed that actually Trossard would have been a more potent weapon. But yeah, we have missed Martinelli, mate. Again, the stats do show that he had a spell between November and this is actually an interesting point, right? He had a spell between November and January that was similar to Saka's, where it wasn't just quite happening for him. But what's really interesting in that period was we had alternatives, as in we basically, whether it was Nelson or whether it was if we were just trying something else with I think at that time, well, before we signed Trossard, we had tried a few other things with I want to say with Smith Rowe, but also with Odegaard and Vieira, and just kind of just trying little different things.
Vieira got a lot of minutes in a lot of weird positions at that point in time.
Yeah. Well, if you look at it, you basically look at that period and you see that period and you see Martinelli coming off a lot. So it was like, or coming off a lot, or they're not starting or whatever. So it was like we had an alternative ideas, but Saka never had that. Saka for that this whole period just didn't have that alternative, and so was burned out or whatever. I know we've already covered that, so don't want to go there. But I guess my point is, I don't see us getting another left-sided player, mate. The only scenario is if we get rid of Smith Rowe. The only scenario, because they could. I don't know again what their idea is around Smith Rowe and where they see him in terms of their kind of squad building, but otherwise I can't see it, mate. We did. any game that Martinelli isn't involved in, you miss him because he's quality. I think it's as simple as that. But yeah, mate, we still should have had enough to beat Forest.
Yeah, fair enough. Just briefly on Smith Rowe, I know we've spoken about him a lot in the past. If you were going to put money on him being here next season or on him not being here, which way would you go?
I'd put money on him being here, actually. I put money on him being here. I think that there isn't a club out there that would give us perhaps the money that we would like to think that we could generate from a player of his capability. And that's partly because he's had a season where he's barely played. He had an injury before that. I don't think that. I think it's like one of these things. I think he's worth more to us than he is to anyone else in that respect, right? So I don't think that bit matches up. Because he is so young, I think they will think that maybe there is still that player there that we can reignite. Because if we get, at the end of the day, if we get him back to what he was like last season, that's amazing for our squad. Even if we get him just back to that level, forget him getting better from that level, which we would like him to do. But if we just get him back to that level, that would be an asset. So I don't see him moving on, but I am intrigued to know what's going on there.
Yeah, it is very weird, the situation with Smith Rowe. It just seems like, for whatever reason, Smith Rowe has gone from being one of Arteta's trusted players to like completely on the outskirts of that inner circle of players he trusts. And I think I just can't help but feel that Trossard is basically Smith Rowe, but better in a lot of things, right? And like you go back to luxuries. Can we really afford to essentially have a worse Leandro Trossard just knocking about in the squad come Champions League time? And actually, how many minutes will he get and how many minutes will he want? I do hope he can make it work. And I just hope that maybe this is a case of you give him a really good preseason, completely injury-free, and he can find his fitness again and find his momentum and find his mojo and just figure it out. But
I mean, Charles is saying Uncle Unai would want him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And if Uncle Unai wants to give us £70 million, and because Unai does do weird things in terms of how much, remember he wanted to drop like 90 million on Zaha for us. So if he wants to do that, Villa's a very good club, and I think he would do well. Yeah.
What would you take for him? So in the summer, if a bid came in, what would make you go, Arsenal should take that?
Anything north of 45 million, you probably take it. Yeah. 50 million. I can't see him going. It'll be a very weird thing if a club went and dropped 50 million on him, given the season he's had and his fitness issues.
Thing is, how much did Newcastle spend on Anthony Gordon?
I think
it was a similar amount, didn't they?
Yeah. And then, I mean, like Newcastle paid what, 35 million for Joe Willock or something?
Something like that. Maybe, something like that.
So yeah, when you put it in that context, young English, maybe he could get that. And we're going to have to make some difficult decisions on players that we really like this summer. Cool. Anyway, let's zoom out a bit. So we lost the game. Man City have won the league. Any thoughts on Man City, Raj? Like how good is this Man City team? Like, and how do you feel that we've pushed them, till the, let's say, third last game of their season to win the league? Because the reality is, you look at the table, if it wasn't for us, Man City probably would have won the league 5-6 games ago, possibly, or they would have certainly, been close to being mathematically done very, around that time. It's really hard for me to admire this Man City team because of all the allegations, because of the 150 charges, and just the fact that I just find them boring. Like they've got wonderful players, they score wonderful goals, they've got an incredible manager, but everything they do for me is just completely and utterly soulless because of just the significant advantages they have to do everything right. And And there for me, it's like, well, if City don't, the fact that City haven't won the Champions League in the last 2 or 3 years is like, a horrendous failure for me. Like, how have they not won the Champions League until now? So yeah, they'll probably, and I hope they win the Champions League this season. I hope they win the FA Cup, because the only bit of like solace you can squeeze from this is that it will really annoy Man United fans if they win the treble. But apart from that, it's really boring. Like, I didn't see the trophy lift today. I had some plans. I'm glad I missed it. I'm not going to make any effort to go and watch another City trophy lift. It doesn't seem like even their fans are that bothered, to be honest. It's just like another win for them.
There was a massive pitch invasion.
Was there? Okay.
Yeah. So you really haven't seen any of it?
I haven't seen any of it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was quite interesting. So there was a huge pitch invasion, to which the upper tier of the Man City Stadium were booing because it was just like get off the pitch. But it was quite significant. It was quite funny because on Twitter, you sort of saw people saying, "Oh, clearly the stewards are basically pulling these people on the pitch to like give the illusion of this pitch invasion." But it was quite a big pitch invasion, to be fair, and it went on for ages. But I'm with you, and I don't know if it sounds like sour grapes. Hey, maybe there's an element of it, but I'm finding it very hard to get into this loving. Like on Sky Sports coverage, it was an absolute loving of just how amazing this achievement is, how amazing Pep is, which he is. I think Pep's amazing, but anyway, but nothing. They did so hard at any point when it came anywhere near the point around charges and anywhere near the point around financial might being a key reason in this. It was veered away, and I find it really hard because the arguments are really poor. Like, firstly, forget the charges for a second, right? So push the charges away for a second. There's this argument that City make a lot and some others make where they say, if you look at recent years, if you look at net spend, City's isn't actually that bad compared to other top teams. Yeah. That is expected because when you invest so much money and you create a really good squad, after you've got to the point of creating a really good squad, you always expect your net spend to even out because the players you sell are really good players and they will bring in money. Yeah, like that happens. Yeah. And the players that you need to bring in, you don't have to bring in that many more players. Additionally, there's so many players who have got lower release clauses, but will come to you because you are that top team. So you are getting a top player for a really good price because they've got a clause or whatever, but they're coming to you. It's like a Kanji. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, but they signed a Kanji for like 16 million. That's like a bargain. That's not loads of money." Yeah, he's on about 200k a week to be a rotational centre back. He's going there because they're offering him 200 grand a week. So to say that, money, whatever, like there's so many reasons why you can't look at it that simplistically. And then that ties into why these allegations, not even allegations, they're charges. These charges, right? Over a number of years, 115 charges, even though those years go up to, I think, 2017, 18. So it's not for the last kind of few years. It's significant because of, I guess, my first point. They spent that period of time was where they built this super team, super club, whatever. And the period since then, the net spend and everything's been pretty manageable because they already built the bloody super team. Right. And so everyone keeps dancing around this notion that it's not that important, that Pep's done this magical thing. Yeah, he's done this magic. I mean, come on, man. Like everyone's sort of talking about, oh yeah, but Rico Lewis didn't cost much money because he was from the academy, and look him trying to do that. Yeah, he already spent like 300 million on fullbacks before he decided to do that. He got to try everything. So this loving is really, I find it really difficult, and I don't like how the mainstream media are dancing around it. I can kind of understand why they're dancing around it, because they probably feel like if they say something, are there going to be repercussions on them as individuals? Is some big high-flying lawyer from City going to turn around and go, we can sue them for even suggesting that? Are they going to do that? I don't know, but it's really annoying, I find, and it maybe there is an element of sour grapes. I probably wouldn't be going on about it this way if we didn't finish second, but that doesn't mean it's not true. Just because I'm going on about it, just because I've got sour grapes, doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah, I think there are ways of giving this City team praise because they're a phenomenal team, right? They've got a phenomenal manager, and there have been many clubs and managers and boardrooms and like leadership type structures that you give them that same amount of money, they won't be able to do what City did, right? So yes, they have the money, but they have spent it incredibly well, mostly. But like you said, they've got the luxury of, if they do make a mistake, right? If City had bought £75 million Nicolas Pepe, they're not waiting 3 years for him to come good, right? They wait a year and they say, right, he's not working. Let's put him on the bench and play him in the League Cup, and we'll go and get another £75 million winger, right? Like and being able to just like sack off all your expensive failures and get new ones in and replace your squad and renew your squad on a season by season basis is the reason City are able to build up that squad. And yes, they're doing it right. And yes, they've got a phenomenal manager who I think is tactically completely changed football, and he should be praised for that. But you can give them all this praise while still saying, yeah, they're the richest club in the world and they should be winning the league every season. They should be winning the Champions League every season because no other club has got anywhere near as many financial resources to compete. And any time they even drop a single point, it's a massive failure for me, because they should be steamrolling this league season after season. So yeah, it does annoy me a bit, but let's go back to us briefly, and then I quickly want to talk about the Wolves game and the final home game of the season. Look, I think when we started this, we did say that, look, the last 7 or 8 games, they haven't been good enough, right? I think statistically, we started the season, after the first half of the season, we were on a basically 100-point season, like 50 points at the halfway point or something like that. We were saying we could get 100 points. If you look at the last 7 or 8 games, we're on track, and you play that out over the course of the whole season, we would probably get about 65 points, which is probably not even good enough for top 4. Where do you see this Arsenal team? Like, is this an Arsenal team that is a top team that is able to compete with City that did just bottle it at the end of the season? Or is this a top 4 team that massively overperformed and then kind of just hit back to the average towards the end?
I am really optimistic about next season. I don't buy, like, there was a comment earlier. I'm going to put it. Oh, yes, Christopher Clark put this comment here where he said, it's a very sad feeling this year. It should have been us champions. I hear persons saying next year it's going to get tougher and more harder. I think that this was always going to be a season where we were going to be better than last season, but we were never going to be the finished article. I didn't think we'd be this much better than we were last season. And it's a young squad, a really young squad, and a young first team. You have to assume, everything would tell you that even if it was just the same group of players, they will be better next season. Can City get materially better next season? Maybe they can in some respects. Do I think they will? I don't think they will. I think that they will probably maintain their level. I can see them signing maybe a couple more. They'll get another centre back. I think they might do some other business. They might do some classic maneuvers to stop other clubs signing those players, like they did with Calvin Phillips. But I think that we've got a way. I think we've got a lot of room to get better, and I think that with some better squad depth, with a bit more experience that's going to come from how we navigated this year, I think we could be. Sorry, let me pause. I don't necessarily think that means that I think that next season we are favourites to win the league. Far from it. But I think that next season we will be a top 4 side, and we'll put a good Champions League run together. And to be honest, I actually think that would be success. If next season we finished in the top 4 again, but did well in the Champions League, and it would be great if we won a trophy, even if it's a Carabao Cup or whatever. I think that would be success. I don't think it just because we finished second this year, if we don't win the league next year, it's downhill. I think that we have to be realistic. And I think that this side is going to have to, the squad, as much as they are going to get better, will also have to figure out how to navigate to major competitions. It's not going to be like this season, man. Like this season when we had Europa, we could play a mixed team and, whatever. We'll probably still have to rotate this time in the Champions League, but we can't we can't basically have an A team and a B team. It's going to be a different kettle of fish. So I'm confident. But I think you need to contextualize that confidence. I don't think that we're going to compete for that. I don't think we're going to win the league next season. Put it this way.
Yeah. I think for me, look, the interesting part is I think the first half of the season, and not even the first half, up until March, we have seen we've seen the ceiling, right? And the ceiling, we know now that this team are capable, if everything goes right for us, in my opinion, this team are capable of winning the league. And we've shown that, right? The first 6 months, or the 3-4 months of the season, we were on track to get 100 points this season. Now, obviously, there was a bit of overperformance there, but we had the pace, we had the mentality, we showed that we could rock up to these big away games and actually perform, right? And the only times we didn't really perform, the biggest of games, was City home and away, and that's ultimately the difference. Like, people can talk about like how we've dropped points against West Ham, against Liverpool, and all those teams, but you can't lose to City twice home and away in the league and also in the cup and then say you're a better team than them. You just can't, right? And if we get points against City home and away, it's a very, very different league season. But ultimately, I think this regression has shown that A, we just don't have the squad to maintain a 100-point pace all through the season, and B, that actually some of the players we thought could be depended on to get us over the line might not be there yet, right? So because either they've been overplayed, like players like Saka, or actually just that maybe they're not as good as we thought. And the one player that comes to my mind is Thomas Partey, who for me was, he was the best midfielder in the league for the first 4 or 5 months of the season. And now he looks like a Sunday league player. And now he's been shunted out to right back for an aging Jorginho who struggles with consistency himself. So we're going to have to address these problems next season. And hopefully with depth, we can rotate. It means that Saka isn't tired come the end of the season. We have another option in Jesus. We hopefully don't have to mess about with our defense as much because we can rotate our centre backs because we've got more options there. And still, we've said it before, but that Saliba Tomiyasu injury really, really killed us. So yeah, I think we can still give any team a run for their money. And actually, I was thinking about this. What we do actually need is, I think, a 2 or 3 horse race probably suits us, because like there was, when it could last 2 months of the season, there was only one team that had a chance of beating City, and that was us, right? We knew when City were playing Liverpool, they had no chance. So City were playing Chelsea today, spent 250 million quid, no chance. City played United, they absolutely battered them. And what we need is, we probably need a Liverpool, we need a Man United. We need these teams able to go to City and take points off them, just like they can take points off us. And maybe that will kind of level the playing field a bit. And actually, in a 2-horse race, when City are going to win every single game, what it really takes is for us to maybe drop a few points here and there, and for them to beat us home and away, and the league's done. If we can narrow that gap a bit, that will really help us. But yeah, the question of what is success for us next season is going to be really, really interesting. Maybe we'll save that discussion for another day, because we should talk briefly about the final home game of the season, the final game of the season. Wolves at home. Tickets were once going for 20, 30 grand, apparently. I don't know what the price of them now is, but What are your thoughts and feelings going into that final home game?
Always like the last game of the season being a home game, whatever the case. I think if the last game of the season is an away game, I think it's very easy for the away team to really be on the beach, right? And I think with Wolves, come on, man, like they've got nothing to play for at all. They're, I just, I can't see anything but an Arsenal win. I think it'll probably be a pretty low octane game. I mean, who's going to be diving in for those 50-50s? Do you know what I mean? Like, why would you do that? But I think I'm quite looking forward to it for the potential of it just being. Well, I think we know that it's Xhaka's farewell, right? So basically, it sounds like it is his farewell, and he's just been such a good player this season, and someone who's just had this amazing story arc with us for a number of years, been through a lot, multiple managers. Sort of, I guess he's experienced in some ways a lot of what many of us as fans have experienced. Obviously, he's been living it and part of it, and part of the reason for some of those ups and downs. But yeah, I think he deserves a nice goodbye. I also think that this is like Charles has just put this comment in, which I agree with. I think the team just deserve a massive round of applause for the season. Very simply, man, like they outdid our expectations. This has been a really sad kind of sort of a really low sort of end period. But at the end of the day, it's still amazing that we finished second and we're in the Champions League. And I can't wait to hear Champions League music this year. And I think the next season, I think one of the things our fans need to remember is that, right, we've been so integral as well as fans to the success this season. The players have called it out. The managers called it out. And we felt it in the state. We felt being a part of some of those key moments, the moment where the players needed us. We felt that. So the players, they're going to need to also know that we really do believe in them, and I think that means a lot to them. And I think that next season, that they need to go in with the confidence that we sort of we do believe in them. So it's interesting Russ's comment about I think we'll really struggle next season. He's obviously not feeling any optimism that I've just described. But yeah, look, I think so. Just to answer your question properly, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the guys. I hope they give a good performance. I don't expect fireworks. I don't expect, and that's not therefore contingent on whether I'm going to be applauding them or not. I just want to thank them for the season they've given us and say farewell to some of the guys we won't see again. Because I don't know, man, Holding, Elneny, like those guys, might not see them again.
Yeah, good point. I think, look, there's two ways of approaching this game. And when you're in the crowd, I think you could sit there and be like, oh, what could have been? And it's natural to think that this could have been a really, really special game where we could have been getting ready to lift a Premier League trophy. And actually, though, when you look at it, we were, as a table will show, probably a little bit far away from that. And we could sit there and think, what if we'd done this? What if we'd done this? But I think as Arsenal fans, especially in this podcast, we've done loads of that already, right? We spent the last hour doing that as well. So I really hope we win, because I think this team deserves to go out on a high. And I think this team deserves a huge amount of love for the progress, the good times, the vibes, the potential, the excitement that we'll have in the summer about where we can go next. Because like, if we had just scraped fourth, yes, we've been excited for Champions League next season, but we're not going to be having summer conversations about how can we challenge Man City for the title. If we'd scrape fourth, it's going to be, how are we going to scrape fourth again next season? How are we going to compete with Spurs? How are we going to compete with Man United? Man United are going to be strengthening. Spurs are going to be strengthening. Villa around our shoulder. And look, we could be in a season, and maybe Russ is right, maybe we could end up getting dragged into a top four fight next season. But because of the hard work that this team has put in, especially the first half of the season, but also just consistently throughout the season, except the last 7 or 8 games, we can dream again, right? We can dream about a title race. We can dream about how can we be the team that finally takes Man City's title back and actually puts them back a peg or two. And the only reason we can dream, the only reason we can think of like, oh, how do we compete with the Mahrez, the Haalands, the De Bruynes of this world, is because of the work that's gone in this season. I think the players deserve a huge amount of credit for that. And yeah, it'll be a shame to see probably a few players, like you mentioned those guys earlier, but the likes of Tierney, the likes of Smith Rowe, we might never see them play at the Arsenal again. And
it would be nice if we knew it beforehand. Obviously, we're not going to know it beforehand, right? To give them that proper goodbye. But
I can't remember who it was last season where I can't remember who it was. We were absolutely certain and we said bye-bye. But I can't remember who it was that they left and we were like, it's a real shame we're not going to see them again. But no, look, I hope everyone stays for the lap of honor. I think it'll be a good day, good vibes. And you said you're going to win, Raj, so I'll go to you for your prediction now. What do you think your score will be?
Yeah, I think we'll win 2-1. 2-1. But I think it'll be like a 2. I think it'll be like a 2-0 game. We'll go 2-0 up, and then I think they'll get a consolation goal.
Fair. I think I predicted 4-0 for the City game. A 4-0 Arsenal win. That didn't happen. But I'm going to roll it over and go 4-0 for this one. Okay. I think this will be the game that it all comes right. And again, it'll be really frustrating because we're just going to be like, oh, why can you?
A 4-0 is a classic last day of the season Arsenal home. Yeah. Like, I think I've been to it. I think we've had a couple from memory. I think we've won 4-0 a couple of times on the last day of the season.
With Everton, I think we scored 3 or 4 against Everton last season. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well,
that's really interesting. I just to finish. Russ is we're saying if we don't win the last game, I think we toxic. I completely disagree. So just for those who can't hear, who can't read it, Russ is saying if we don't win the last game, I think there'll be a toxic atmosphere. Toxic is it's a pretty big word. Toxic. I would describe how Tottenham's last home game this weekend. Apparently when they played the end of season highlights on the big screen, there was booing from the fans, and that's toxic, right? I don't think so, Russ. I genuinely think even if we were to lose, even if we lost, the only reason why we could lose this weekend is if the players just they're not really 100%. They just don't really, they're just not fully focused and whatever. I still don't think that there's any chance whatsoever of it being a toxic atmosphere. The worst that it could be is that there's a number of people who leave before kind of the lap of honor or whatever. But I still don't think that will be that many. I think there'll be fundamentally, whatever happens, the majority, if not all of the stadium will be there clapping the team. We'll see if I'm wrong, but that's my prediction. Hey, we might not lose, but
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, I think maybe I'm not going to have a go at Russ, right? But I think when you are in the ground, and especially if you've got a season ticket, you go regularly, right? It's very hard to describe the uplift and the feeling and how much better it is in the ground this year. And I think this team with this home crowd, they've banked a lot of credit. And actually, even if we lose, let's say we lose 3-0, people will be annoyed. We saw after the Brighton game, people did leave, right? But I think there's a lot of recognition for just how far we've come. And yes, it's not, some will say we didn't go far enough, but I think there's enough credit in the bank to see us through. And I'm hoping we win because it will just make it easy. And Charles, we'll probably close on Charles' inspirational quote and prediction. Arsenal smash when aspirations are trash. 5-1 Wolves.
That's a tattoo right there, that is.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Next, nice one. Thank you. Thank you, host. Appreciate it, man. Great job.
Cheers. And cool. We'll see you all next week to review the Wolves game and probably do some summer transfer stuff and a review of the season and everything to come. So do stay with us. Please do like and subscribe and review and tell your friends and your family and your teachers and your enemies and just tell people, please. And we'll see you soon. Take care, Rog. See ya.
Take care. Thanks, guys.